AITA for role-playing a religious character and not changing it. It started innocently enough, or at least I thought it did. At 26, I had been part of an online role-playing community for years. It was a place where creativity thrived, where stories came alive, and where characters became almost real. I had just created a new character, a deeply devout priestess named Sarafina, devoted to her faith, her morals, and her code of ethics. My friends loved her immediately. She was strong, unwavering, and inspiring, but I hadn't anticipated the drama that would follow. My partner in the roleplay, Mark 28 meters, had recently joined the server. He played a cynical, rebellious rogue who constantly challenged authority and my character. At first, our interactions were fun. Sarafina tried to guide him, correct him, and bring him back to the light while he pushed boundaries, teasing and testing her. Then things got personal. "Why do you have to play her so seriously?" he asked one night over voice chat. "She's supposed to be unwavering," I replied, laughing. "That's the point. It's annoying. Can't you just lighten up? Make her more like you." I hesitated. I could change Sarafina, yes, but the character was part of me, her devotion, her morality, her unwavering nature. I wasn't going to compromise that just to please him, no. She's her own person. That's the story, I said firmly. That was when the subtle tension began. Mark started ignoring my character's directives, acting out in ways that undermined Sarafina's morality. Other players noticed, and some began questioning why I wasn't adjusting my character to make the game more enjoyable. The breaking point came during a big in-game event, a massive story arc involving a moral crisis. Sarafina stood by her principles, refusing to take shortcuts, refusing to lie, refusing to betray her faith. Mark's rogue, naturally, tried to manipulate her, trying to force decisions that went against her code. Then came the private messages. "You're making this impossible for me. Why can't you just play normal?" "I can't compromise her morality. That's the character," I replied. "You're being ridiculous. Everyone's getting frustrated. You're ruining the fun." I felt a mixture of disbelief and betrayal. I had trusted Mark to role-play with me respectfully, to interact with Sarafina as a character, not as a personal attack. And yet here he was, demanding I change the core of who she was, demanding I betray the character I had spent weeks crafting, the very essence of her identity. It didn't stop there. Mark began whispering to other players, subtly turning them against me. He framed me as inflexible and difficult, someone who ruined collaborative storytelling by refusing to change a character to appease others. Even friends I trusted began questioning if I was being unreasonable. "Maybe you should lighten up," one friend suggested. "It's just a game. Maybe you're making it about yourself," another chimed in. I felt cornered. But deep down, I knew something important. Sarafina wasn't just a game piece. She was a reflection of my creative integrity. Changing her core values would be a betrayal not of Mark, not of the other players, but of myself. The drama spilled beyond the game. Mark started sending messages about how rigid I was, how I needed to learn to compromise, and even questioning my ability to collaborate in real life. He framed my refusal as personal, not artistic. "You're being difficult in everything," he wrote. "It's like you can't let anyone enjoy themselves if it challenges your rules." That night, I logged off, my chest tight, heart pounding. I realized the betrayal wasn't just about role-playing. It was about someone trying to force me to compromise my integrity under the guise of fun. It was about someone trying to control me, even in a space that was supposed to be creative and safe. And I made a choice. I would not change Sarafina. I would not betray my character. I would not allow Mark or anyone else to manipulate my creativity or my morals. The fallout was immediate. Mark left the server in a huff, bad-mouthing me to other players. Some left with him, but others stayed, and they began to understand. This wasn't stubbornness. It was integrity, and it was courage. Months later, Sarafina became one of the most respected characters on the server. Players admired her unwavering principles, her moral courage, and her refusal to compromise under pressure. I learned that betrayal isn't always dramatic. It can be subtle, in the form of coercion, manipulation, and the expectation that you bend for others at the cost of your values. Standing firm taught me something vital. Integrity matters more than approval. Art matters more than convenience. And sometimes saying no is not cruelty, it's survival. After Mark stormed off the server in frustration, I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. At first, it was subtle. Mutual players started whispering about how difficult I was, how Serafina is impossible to role-play with, and why won't you let the story be fun. Every comment stung, each one feeling like a betrayal from people I had trusted in the community. Then came the private messages. Mark had begun reaching out to other players individually, trying to convince them that I was rigid and controlling. She refuses to adapt, even when it's just for fun. Don't waste your time with her. You don't understand, she takes everything too seriously. It's exhausting. Some of the newer players began to listen, and I felt the sting of betrayal. Friends I had trusted, even players who had praised Serafina's moral integrity, now hesitated to interact with me. I realized this was more than role-play drama. This was manipulation, pure and simple. Mark was weaponizing the story, the community, and my own commitment to integrity against me. And I could either back down, compromise Serafina, and give in, or stand firm and risk isolation. I chose the latter. I spent hours documenting everything: screenshots of messages, notes on conversations, examples of his manipulations. I reached out to the server moderators, explaining the situation calmly and clearly. I framed it not as a personal attack, but as a disruption to the community. Mark was undermining collaborative storytelling and pressuring me to betray my character. It wasn't easy. There were weeks of tension, whispers, and arguments. Some players were still swayed by his charm and framing. Others, however, began to see the truth. He was acting out of control, trying to manipulate the narrative and the people around him, not collaborating. The climax came during the next major event, a storyline involving Serafina confronting corruption within her religious order. Mark had returned with a vengeance, trying to force my character into unethical decisions for the sake of drama. His rogue character attempted manipulation, deceit, and coercion, pushing Serafina to break her moral code. I didn't budge. Serafina stood firm, refusing every bribe, deception, and threat. She challenged him directly in the storyline, exposing the rogue's manipulations to other characters in-game. Slowly, players who had been unsure began to see Mark's behavior for what it was: not playful rebellion, but calculated sabotage. In private messages, some of the community's most respected players wrote to me, "I see what Hay is doing now. You weren't being unreasonable, you were being principled. Thank you for standing your ground. It's rare to see someone protect their character and integrity like this. You're inspiring." By the end of the arc, Mark had been quietly removed from the server after multiple players came forward with examples of his manipulative behavior. His attempts to turn the community against me had backfired spectacularly. Serafina had not only survived the moral tests, but she had also become one of the most respected and admired characters on the server. I realized then that betrayal isn't always obvious. It can be subtle: coaxing, manipulating, and pressuring you to betray your values. And the strongest response isn't anger or revenge, it's integrity. Standing firm, documenting the truth, and refusing to compromise your principles ultimately protects you and earns genuine respect. Months later, Serafina is still active in the server. Players often tell me how much they admire her courage and unwavering morality. And have learned a lesson I will never forget: the people who demand you change for their convenience aren't your allies. Integrity is more important than approval, and sometimes the hardest battles are fought not in dramatic betrayals, but in subtle manipulations, and winning them is worth every moment of struggle. After Mark's removal from the server, I thought the ordeal had ended. I was wrong. Weeks later, I started noticing strange messages in other communities. I participated in messages referencing me, Serafina, and my inflexibility. At first, I ignored them, assuming they were isolated trolls. But the pattern quickly became clear. Mark had created fake accounts, spreading lies about me across multiple role-playing forums. She's controlling and refuses to collaborate. She manipulates the story to suit her ego. Avoid her if you want a fun experience. It was subtle at first, but as more players began questioning me, it escalated. Some communities even warned me that my behavior had caused tension, citing his messages. The betrayal cut deep. This was not just manipulation in one server anymore. He was actively trying to ruin my reputation and friendships across the internet. I realized that fighting back would require more than polite explanations. I had to confront this head-on. I began documenting everything meticulously: screenshots of fake accounts, timestamps of messages, proof of his manipulations in the original server, and notes from players who had witnessed his behavior firsthand. I reached out to moderators of the affected forums, presenting the evidence calmly and clearly. I explained that I had been targeted, that someone was spreading false narratives about me, and that this was not a matter of creative differences, but intentional harassment. The moderators were initially skeptical. They had seen conflicting stories. But as I walked them through the timeline, providing verifiable proof, the tide began to turn. Accounts were suspended, posts removed, and eventually Mark was banned from multiple communities. Even so, the social betrayal lingered. Some players had believed him, some friends had drifted away, unsure of what to think. I felt isolated and exhausted. It wasn't just about role-playing anymore. It was about trust, reputation, and the emotional labor of defending myself against someone I had once loved and trusted. Then came the final confrontation, virtual but intense. Mark attempted to infiltrate a livestream I hosted for one of the communities, posting false claims in real time and trying to provoke arguments. But I was ready. I had moderators on standby, had documented his manipulations, and had prepared a calm, factual response. "These claims are false," I said, speaking to the audience. "I will provide proof of the harassment and manipulation if endured." I walked the viewers through the evidence, step by step. Screenshots, timestamps, witness statements, server logs. I explained the situation clearly, without anger but with firm conviction. By the end of the stream, viewers were supportive and many publicly condemned Mark's behavior. It was a turning point. His attempts at public humiliation, manipulation, and betrayal had been exposed. Instead of isolating me, he had inadvertently strengthened my reputation. People respected my integrity, my dedication to my character, and my courage in standing firm. In the weeks that followed, I noticed a shift. Former allies of Mark began apologizing, acknowledging that they hadn't understood the full story. Communities welcomed me back fully, often highlighting Sarafina as a character of inspiration and moral courage. Even friends who had been unsure at first began to reach out, praising my strength and resilience. Most importantly, I learned a crucial lesson about betrayal and integrity. True betrayal isn't always dramatic. It can be subtle, creeping through lies, manipulation, and social sabotage. And the best way to survive it is with unwavering principles, meticulous documentation, and courage. Sarafina remains a beloved character, admired not only for her unwavering faith and moral integrity, but also as a symbol of standing firm under pressure. And I, as her creator, learned that protecting your values, even against someone who once held your heart, is not just survival, it's empowerment. Because in the end, integrity outlasts manipulation, and the people who try to tear you down often reveal more about themselves than they ever could about you. Months had passed since the last confrontation, and I thought the ordeal had reached its peak. Sarafina was thriving in the roleplay communities, respected and admired. My own confidence and resilience had grown, and I was finally feeling some peace. Then, Mark struck again, but this time, it wasn't just in the roleplay servers or forums. He created multiple fake social media accounts, sending messages to professional contacts, friends, and acquaintances, claiming that I had harassed him online and ruined collaborative projects. His goal was clear: discredit me, tarnish my reputation, and isolate me completely. It was a calculated escalation. By this point, I wasn't just fighting to protect my hobby, I was fighting for my social life, my career, and my sanity. The first sign of his latest attack was a direct message from a professional contact I had collaborated with for a creative project. "I received some concerning messages about you. Can you clarify?" My heart sank, but I refused to panic. I immediately gathered all evidence, screenshots of his fake accounts, timestamps, server logs, and messages from witnesses confirming his manipulations. I drafted a calm, factual response, presenting the proof to my contacts without a hint of anger or defensiveness. The reaction was overwhelmingly supportive. People expressed shock at his actions, apologized for doubting me, and commended my professionalism in handling the situation. Even the most skeptical colleagues acknowledged that he was attempting to manipulate perception and spread falsehoods. Then came the final confrontation, orchestrated by Mark himself. He attempted to bait me into a public debate on a livestream platform, inviting viewers from multiple communities and forums to watch, hoping to provoke an argument and humiliate me. But I was ready. I had moderators and allies on standby, and I had meticulously documented every instance of his manipulative behavior. I entered the livestream, calm and composed, prepared to turn the tables. "Thank you all for joining," I began. "Before anything else, I want to clarify the facts. The claims being made by Mark are false and misleading. I will provide evidence to show exactly what happened." I presented the timeline of events, screenshots, witness statements, and examples of his manipulations. I explained how he had attempted to pressure me to compromise my character, spread lies across multiple platforms, and attempt to ruin my reputation. "This is not about a disagreement in a roleplay community," I said. "This is about manipulation, harassment, and betrayal. And I will not be intimidated into betraying my principles or my integrity." The audience watched in silence at first, then began reacting. Comments poured in, expressing support, admiration, and validation. Many viewers who had previously been unsure now publicly condemned Mark's actions. Mark tried to respond, attempting to twist the narrative in real time, but I remained calm and factual. Moderators intervened, highlighting his false accounts and manipulative attempts. Within hours, his livestream attack was shut down and his credibility was fully destroyed across the communities he had tried to manipulate. The aftermath was profound. Former allies of Mark apologized, acknowledging that they hadn't fully understood the situation. Communities that had doubted me now celebrated my courage, resilience, and integrity. Sarafina became a symbol of standing firm under pressure, admired not only for her unwavering morality but for the real-world strength of her creator. Reflecting on the ordeal, I realized a crucial truth: betrayal is not always dramatic infidelity or outright theft. It can be subtle, creeping through manipulation, pressure, and social sabotage. But standing firm, documenting the truth, and refusing to compromise your principles turns betrayal into empowerment. Months later, I look back on the events not with bitterness, but with pride. I protected my boundaries, defended my integrity, and emerged stronger. I learned that the people who attempt to control you or undermine your life are not worth your compromise, but they can reveal the depth of your resilience and the power of your character. In the end, Sarafina thrived, my reputation was restored, and I gained something even more valuable: a deep understanding of the strength it takes to stand firm against manipulation, and the knowledge that integrity always outlasts betrayal. No matter how cunning the betrayer, no matter how intense the manipulation, true resilience comes from unwavering principles and the courage to defend them against anyone, even someone who once held your heart. Even after Mark's public humiliation and banishment from multiple communities, the ripples of his manipulations lingered. Some people still whispered behind closed doors, questioning my motives, doubting my character, or subtly blaming me for the chaos he had caused. It was exhausting, but I had learned to weather storms. I began noticing patterns, subtle attempts at sabotage in unrelated creative projects, vague rumors in other forums, and quiet, personal jabs from people who had been influenced by Mark's earlier lies. It was clear that while Mark was gone, his attempts to destabilize me had set off a chain reaction. Instead of retreating, I decided to take control fully. I began documenting everything meticulously with timestamps, screenshots, and witness statements. I created a secure archive of every incident of harassment, manipulation, and betrayal. This archive became both a shield and a weapon. If anyone ever tried to question me again, I could prove the truth beyond doubt. Meanwhile, Sarafina's story continued to evolve in the roleplay world. New players joined, intrigued by the legendary priestess whose unwavering morality had weathered storms and betrayal. Many characters now interacted with her in ways that mirrored the real-life lessons I had learned: trust cautiously, stand firm under pressure, and recognize manipulation for what it is. Mark, from a distance, attempted one last desperate maneuver. He created an anonymous forum thread accusing me of favoritism, claiming I was forcing storylines and controlling outcomes unfairly. But this time, I was prepared. I calmly addressed the thread, posting factual responses, sharing proof of previous manipulations, and inviting witnesses to corroborate my side. The response was overwhelming. The community rallied, exposing Mark's lies and emphasizing the integrity I had consistently demonstrated. New allies emerged. People who had once been on the fence now openly supported me, impressed by my composure and dedication. As months turned into a year, the saga continued, but in a new form. Other minor players tried to test me, to push boundaries, or to influence Sarafina in ways that challenged her integrity. Each time, I faced these trials with the same principles: clear documentation, firm boundaries, and unwavering moral consistency. Through every incident, I learned more about betrayal and human nature. Betrayal wasn't always dramatic. It could be subtle, insidious, and manipulative. Sometimes it came in the guise of friendship, mentorship, or collaboration. But it could also be confronted, exposed, and overcome with preparation, courage, and integrity. Sarafina became more than a character. She became a symbol, a living testament to the power of standing firm under pressure. Players often reached out privately, sharing stories of how her unwavering morality had inspired them, both in roleplay and in real life. Some admitted that seeing her confront manipulative characters had given them the courage to confront toxic relationships in their own lives. I also grew personally. I learned to trust my instincts, to recognize manipulation, and to assert boundaries without guilt. I discovered that true empowerment wasn't just surviving betrayal, it was thriving in spite of it, transforming adversity into strength. My creative work flourished, and my reputation in the community stabilized and even grew stronger than before. Mark faded into irrelevance, his attempts at revenge a distant memory. But the lessons remained. I had faced betrayal on multiple fronts: emotional manipulation, social sabotage, reputation attacks, and persistent harassment. And I had emerged victorious each time, not by compromising, but by standing firm, documenting the truth, and remaining unwavering in my integrity. The story of Sarafina and the roleplay communities became legendary. Players told new members about the priestess who refused to bend, about the manipulative rogue who tried to tear her down, and about the unwavering creator who refused to compromise their principles. The narrative wasn't just about roleplay anymore. It was about resilience, empowerment, and the triumph of integrity over manipulation. In the end, I realized something profound. Betrayal is inevitable in life, whether in intimate relationships, friendships, or creative collaborations. But integrity, courage, and careful documentation can transform betrayal from a source of pain into a source of empowerment. And when you stand firm, even against someone who once held your heart, you don't just survive, you thrive.